Welcome. It is Thursday.
Good
Now,
evening.
I know what you're thinking. It's April 1st, and usually folks associate April 1st with April Fools.
It is April Fools.
But
It's snowing outside in spring. The weather says April Fools. Spring's not here yet.
not everybody has that, just us.
It's
Northwest
Pennsylvania, Northwest
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, we got a little snow, a little bit, just little flurries. But it didn't, don't stop, no show. We're here, and we're glad about it. Listen, that's Veta.
And he's Mac.
And this is
Couch
Couch Conversations.
Conversations.
We're so glad that you take out your time every week to hang out with us on the couch. We have come to really look forward to it. And even when the show is over and the cameras stop rolling, sometimes we'll just sit here and keep talking until she falls asleep. But outside that,
Yeah,
we really enjoy this time on the couch with you. We
because it's
pray
late.
that it is a benefit to you, that you're getting something from this, and that there is value in it. Make sure that you're following us on social media. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button and the bell. Now, I learned something the other day. When you hit the bell notification on YouTube, you have to select if you want a notification for all videos or if you want to personalize it to certain types of videos.
Oh,
So make sure
that's
you
neat.
hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell for notifications and select all, because we're going to be uploading some other content to the YouTube channel, not just the episodes of the radio show. They're there in case you need to go back and reference it, in case you miss it, or in case you know someone who needs to hear it. So you can send them to the YouTube channel and they'll find all of their episodes of the radio show there. We're going to be uploading other content to the YouTube channel as well moving forward in the future. So you don't want to miss out on anything that's new. Follow us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe to the Facebook group because we're putting content in there as well. We try to cover all social media: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And we're going to be sharing a lot of information there as well in the coming weeks and months and days ahead. So you want to make sure that you're following us on all of those social media platforms that you see right there. That way, you know what's going on, what's coming, and what's going. We've got a lot coming up in the future that we're excited about. And I don't want to give it away, but beyond next week and the week after, there's some exciting things on the horizon. So make sure you subscribe to all of those YouTube links, all of the Facebook activity, Twitter, and Instagram. You can follow us on Happy Spouse, Happy
Happy house.
House for all of those social media platforms. You can follow both of us on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as well, because we tend to post some content on our personal pages also. So we want to make sure that we are doing that. All right. Today is April 1st, and this week's topic: boundaries,
Boundaries.
how to set them and how to respect them. Now, if you haven't had a chance, I want to encourage you, and this is a shameless plug, forgive me. I wrote a book several years ago called Divorced Over Toilet Paper. Take a chance, take time out, go to your Amazon bookstore and pick up a copy of that book. You can get the hard copy or you can get the electronic digital copy, but make sure you get a copy of that book and get one for you and your spouse, because there's a lot of great, valuable content in that book. I have testimonials from couples who've been married longer than I've been alive, and they said after reading the book, it was very helpful to them because they learned some things that they didn't know before about
Yeah.
themselves, about their marriage, some things they wish they knew 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. So it's very helpful information that we've accumulated over the years, and we've put it into that manuscript. Fellas, it's not long. It's under 100
Mm.
pages. So you don't have to worry about it. And the print is pretty big. So make sure you go get that book. Tonight's topic, boundaries, really comes from the book. Right? We have an entire chapter in the book about boundaries. And so we're going to be talking through that tonight, because the reality is every relationship has boundaries, some intentionally set, and then some that are just naturally defined by the relationship itself. So you want to make sure that you embrace the notion that boundaries are a real thing. Can I get a witness? Somebody.
Yes, they are a real thing. Boundaries is also a relationship with yourself, knowing what you want and how you want it,
Absolutely.
protecting your personal self by setting a clear line
That's
in
good.
relationships.
Yeah, that's good.
I found that on the website, that definition.
Listen, there's so much information out there. Now, I want to say this because each week in ready for the show and preparing for the show, I do my research, you do your research.
Yeah.
We come across either websites where someone's written a blog or a website where there's a community, a Facebook group. YouTube has a plethora of couch conversations, playlists, and channels. So make sure when you go to YouTube that you look for this link, right? This logo right here. When you go to YouTube and you search up either Happy Spouse, Happy House, or you search up Couch Conversations, make sure you see this graphic right here, this logo right here. That's how you know you're in the right place.
Yes.
But I've come across so many different people with different perspectives, even about boundaries.
Hmm.
And what's always fascinating to me is how people will presume that there's just a large number of other people who share their opinion.
Oh, yeah.
You'll hear people say all the time, everybody thinks this way.
Yeah.
Everybody believes this way. Everybody, whatever it is. And they fall into that trap, at least in my mind, I call it a trap, of presuming that they are in the majority
Yeah.
in terms of their perceptions, their perspective, or the way that they see things. And it's very fascinating to me, some of the notions that are out there, some of the preconceived ideas that people have, not just about their own relationships, but about relationships for other people.
Hmm.
They've just decided everybody see it.
Yeah.
And
Or
we
well, she's a woman, she knows it's the
mhm,
same thought.
mhm, mhm.
Or he's a man,
Right,
he knows my
right.
thoughts. We should be on the same page or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
So yeah. We
And it's fascinating to me that people don't want to be alone. And so
yeah.
they're like, oh yeah, everybody thinks it this way. That's the way everybody sees it. Everybody does it. Everybody talks it. Everybody walks it that way. And
As
the
if we've heard everybody's opinion. Everybody, everybody,
exactly.
everybody.
Haven't taken one poll, not one little survey. You just automatically put everybody in there. Everybody. And it's interesting. I've come across so many um and it's a soapbox moment. It's also a disclaimer. We've been married 20 years coming this May. We've been together for 22 years. I have, unfortunately, a previous marriage. She does not. Why do I say you that? That's our background. We have attended marriage seminars. We have attended marriage counseling. We have attended relationship building seminars and retreats. We've taught them. We've read books together. We've taken classes. We've taught classes.
We've been happy, we've been sad, we've been mad, we've been
All of that.
angry, we've
We've
been
experienced almost everything.
wanting to leave,
Listen,
separate.
no, ain't no wanted to. You left. She was gone the
That's
whole
another
weekend,
other
y'all.
story.
She left me the whole weekend. She was gone. She was like, I'm gone. I'm leaving. I'm
But
going back to my mama.
we've been
point is,
through so
right.
much in the 20 years that we've
Yeah.
been together.
And yet, none of that, in my opinion, and I think you would agree with me, none of that qualifies us as being experts.
Right. No.
We know what we know, but we're not the foremost authority on anything.
Right.
And we want to come across as that.
Like we're experts.
Like
yeah.
we're right.
We're just experts in our relationship.
There it is.
And
We
we're
know what we
still
know.
learning.
Right,
We know what we
right.
want. We
And
know
we're
what
still
we
still learning,
still
growing,
learning and growing.
maturing, all of that. Like I told y'all last week, and like I told you, I learned something last week in the show from you and my behavior and how I'm seeing things and what I'm doing.
Right.
So we're still growing. We're
still growing.
This show is for you and for us.
Yes.
We learn something about each other almost every show. The reason that I'm saying all that, I'm segueing into be careful with whom you listen to.
Yes.
Listen to us, please. But the truth is, make sure that whatever advice you receive pertaining to your marriage, that you filter it through the persona of you and your spouse.
Yes.
Because not all advice that you get you can use.
Right.
Now, I'm a firm believer, and this is my personal belief. If you receive advice, hold on to it, because even if you cannot use it, you're going to come across somebody else who can later on in life. So,
And when you're receiving it, talk about it with
mhm,
each other. Don't
mhm,
just receive it and be like, "Well, this is what I heard," blah 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 blah, and then run with it. Just
right,
talk about it, communicate with each other. See if your spouse agrees with it or does not agree with it,
right.
because you don't have to hold on. You don't have to hold on to
That advice.
that advice,
Yeah.
especially from us. Like we're saying, we're not experts. It's
Hmm.
just our opinion, what we know, because we've been through it
Hello.
in our relationship.
Hello, somebody.
So talk about it.
So you want to do, if nothing else, that advice makes for good conversation.
Yep. Sure does.
Because if I heard worst advice, the weirdest thing you've ever heard, couldn't be further from the truth, and your spouse might say, "Oh wow, that makes a lot of sense,"
Mm-hmm.
because they think it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So we've got to make sure that we're having conversations. Those are the things that couples should be talking about. This whole couch conversations radio show, what married couples should be talking about. You should be talking about
Yes.
and we will be talking about everything. Tonight we're talking about boundaries. Okay, I'm off the soapbox. We're back on task. Y'all should see my producer. She's looking at me crazy. Okay, back on to topic. Tonight's topic: boundaries. Most people don't like boundaries for themselves.
Yeah.
What I found, and I know I just did what I said other people do, but I have found most of the people that I've talked to, they don't like boundaries for themselves. They like boundaries for other people.
Yeah.
They want to impose boundaries on other people. They want to set a boundary for themselves that other people have to respect. When it comes to you respecting someone else's boundaries, then it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
I wrote in the book, like I said, in the book, Divorced Over Toilet Paper. You can find it on Amazon, a hard copy or electronic. I wrote an entire chapter on boundaries. And one of the things that I said was boundaries are important to everyone. Identifying and respecting them is paramount to a healthy relationship. When boundaries are respected, we feel comfortable, we're happy and safe. Boundaries keep us in a place where we're able to be free and unguarded. Being
Good.
inside the bounds allows us the freedom to expound on other limitations we may have in other areas of life where we may be ready to take some chances. Boundaries are important to everyone. We may not talk about it, we may not acknowledge it. Boundaries in general, as a whole, they're important to everyone.
Boundaries are also means honoring ourselves as a separate individual.
Hmm.
And that was from today.com. So honoring ourselves as a separate individual.
Right. Yeah. Because I'm me, she's her. We're one as a couple.
Hmm.
In the marriage, there's only she and I. And you hear all those beautiful sayings. Oh, you complete me, and I wasn't whole until you, and all those sayings that make it seem as though I wasn't everything I'm supposed to be until we got together.
Hmm.
And that's fine. That's wonderful. That's beautiful. None of that means that boundaries for the individual goes out the window, because there are certain things that are um off limits,
Yes.
even in the marriage.
Yes, and other relationships outside of marriage.
Oh
Because we were
Lord.
having a conversation at work, and the conversation was, should a married woman have a relationship with a single woman? Should they go out a lot all the time with the single woman? And that was brought up. And um, I say, yes, you can have a single friend if you're married. But the time that you spend together shouldn't be to the point where your husband is feeling like you're slighting him.
Mhm.
And that could be a boundary, like allowing that person to not dictate your time away from your spouse, because that can be a problem in a relationship if you're always
Mhm.
with a friend.
Yeah.
So
The boundary of time
yes,
and
time.
attention,
Yes.
not giving more time and attention to someone that's not your
Mm-hmm.
spouse. And even in that, boundaries in general help to shape the parameters of our
Need
relationships.
healthy boundaries.
Once
Yes.
you start applying boundaries in a large group, then you can start creating what I'm calling subcategories.
Mm.
Because, like you said, um, the wife has a girlfriend who's not married.
Yeah.
Well, the first boundary is how much time am I spending with my friend and my husband?
And that also needs to be communicated
Right.
between the friend and the wife.
hmm
Yeah.
Look, girl, I can't hang out with you because he here, or I got to do spend
Right.
time with him. But so the first boundary is how much time in general. The second boundary, even with that, would be okay. There are certain things that we won't do or talk about because you're single and not
Oh, yes.
married.
So you could have a
hmm
physical boundary and an emotional boundary.
Right.
Because physical will be time
hmm
spent,
Right.
and then emotional will be feelings and
hmm
things like that.
Yeah, because it's so dangerous to receive input from someone who's not in. Like okay, put it this way. There's these commercials going around now for Rocket Mortgage. Not a plug, they're not a sponsor. Um,
No.
but Rocket Mortgage is a mortgage lending company. They have these commercials with Tracy Morgan on them. The people are trying to buy a house, and the one spouse will say, "Hey, let's get this house," and the one spouse was like, "Can we afford it?" And then they say, "I'm pretty sure I
Mhm.
can afford it."
Mhm.
Uh, and then Tracy Morgan jumps in. Well, let's look like what pretty sure means. And then he's taking. I'm pretty sure that I think one of them. I'm pretty sure you should not run if a wild bear
Oh,
is
yes,
attacking
yes.
you.
I know
You know all
commercial.
those
Yes.
commercials. He's like, I'm pretty sure. And he shows you how being pretty sure can be dangerous.
Yeah.
It's the same concept with boundaries. Um, if I'm listening to someone who themselves is not in the relationship,
Yeah.
well, then I'm pushing the envelope because they're not invested
Yeah.
in the relationship.
But I was about to say, so if the woman is married
Mm-hmm.
and the friend is not,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't that married woman help that become married? Or,
Could she help her
I mean,
become
not become married, but like
become a
give her advice, a wife.
She could, and it's not to say that they shouldn't be friends.
Yeah.
Be friends, hang out from time to time. What I'm saying is you have to temper how much time, attention, and information flows
Yes.
in that relationship. Because the reality is the two of them can be out and the single woman is living her best life
Yeah.
and the married woman is thinking, okay, it's getting late. I got to get home. I got to make sure the kids are fed. I got to make sure the
Right.
husband got what he need. If I don't get home, if I don't check in, if I don't, you know, their mindsets are in the two different places.
And if that friend and um the wife talked or had or understand boundaries,
hmm
that friend could be like, "Hey, girl, you need to get home.
That she should
It
be
she should be a
right, or
hey,
he.
girl."
It goes both
He or
ways.
she,
He
yes.
or she should be.
Hey,
Yeah,
girl, you need to get home because you see what
yeah.
time it is. Because when I used to, when my he used to have a hard time with that. When I used to go with my sister, but my sister was on point. She was like, it's 9 o'clock. Do you think you need to get home?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah," because I might fall asleep. So yes, they have that understanding.
Lord, mercy. Shout out to Lisa. Listen, and that brings us to a very interesting place. Watch this. Can a single person and a married person be friends? Yes. Can they hang out? Yes. Can they
Influence
influence
each other.
one another?
Yes.
Yes. Here's where the danger comes in. Okay, stay with me. The single person with no husband or wife has only themselves to focus on.
Yeah.
So 100% of their energies and attention is self. The married person has a spouse, so they're already dividing their energy and attention between themselves and their spouse. So
Okay.
on their best day, they're functioning off of 50% of their intellect and their energy level. Whereas a single person is on 100 all the time because they have no one else to be concerned about.
Mhm.
So the danger lies
If they don't have
in that
kids.
differential.
If they don't have
Right.
kids.
We leaving kids out of this. They ain't got nothing
Yeah,
to do
we
with this.
talking about okay.
No cheering. No cheering. But the danger lies in the amount of energy that either one of them has for the conversation.
Yeah.
Because if I'm already divided, take me for example, if I'm hanging out with some single guys and we're talking about women as guys do, I'm going to be divided because my attention is not 100% in the conversation
Mhm.
because I'm thinking about you, whether I'm worried about you or I'm wondering about you. I'm always thinking about you.
Mhm.
I'm either worried or wondering. And so I have a divided attention span, which means I'm not using all of my brain capacity for the conversation. So they're going to offer their position and it will sound like it's a solid position
Yeah, but when
because they
people
have
give
everything
yeah,
that they
when people
have.
give opinions and about your life or their life or whatever, try to get you to think differently. You don't have to take their opinion or
Right.
you don't have to take what they give you. But some people aren't built that way where they're like, "Oh no, I'm not going to take your advice. I'm going to stay the course and I'm going to be
Hmm.
strong." Some people are not that, so they do take
Yeah.
advice from
Yeah. Because it sounds good.
yeah.
Yeah. That single person's advice always sounds good because they don't have anybody to consider but themselves.
Mhm.
And so they're going to be very adamant about what they say, and they're going to sound very convicted about what they say because they don't have anybody else to consider but themselves. Whereas a married person, they're divided, and so they have to consider, or at least they should be considering,
Yeah.
their significant other. So it's dangerous in that particular instance for a married person, male or female, to engage too much
Too much.
with a
We're not saying
single
not,
male or
don't.
female.
We're
Right.
just saying not
You can have,
to the point where your husband is feeling neglected.
right, or spouse or wife.
Or
Yeah.
yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm saying
I
because
know.
I'm the wife.
Yes, you are the
Your
wife. Praise the Lord.
just your spouse. Just don't hang out a lot
Right.
where your spouse
Yeah.
is feeling neglected,
Yeah.
and when he or she says something, you
Right.
like, well, that's my friend, and she da, 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 da.
Right.
She been my friend since da, 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 da. No, he needs your time and attention because that's who you married,
Kill somebody.
or that's who she married.
Yeah. We get trapped into the notion that I gotta be me.
Yeah.
We become I when I was single, I was just Marcus McDaniel. When I got married, I became Mr. Marcus McDaniel. Why? Because we're Mrs.
Yeah, but isn't it? I was gonna say, isn't it? Sometimes when the woman gets married, they always say like, "I lost myself,"
They
and
say that, yes.
but do we
Mhm.
truly lose ourselves when we're married?
I hope so.
Why you say that?
Because the you that you were before we became us is not the you that you be for us to be.
You deep.
I
Okay.
know.
That was nice. That
Let
was
me let
nice.
me come back.
Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries.
You were an individual before we got married. Like I said, let's talk about me. I was Marcus McDaniel before we got married. When we got married, I became Mr. because you became Mrs. Think about it when we went to the reception. I introduced to you Mr. and Mrs. When you write it on a piece of paper, Mr. Marcus McDaniel,
Right.
Mrs. Vetta McDaniel. That's on your name tag as a teacher.
Right.
Miss, you make the kids call it Mrs. Vetta. We change our identity because we get married.
Yeah.
If we try to hold on to our single persona, then we are not being honest about wanting to be married.
So what is the boundary in a marriage? What should the boundaries be?
Personality
Now, are we
wise,
talking about boundaries between each other, or are we talking about outside of the
both and
relationship? So we're doing both.
we're talking both
Okay, we're
and
talking about both
right.
and.
It starts with well, not it doesn't start. It's both and because, like to your point earlier, boundaries help me know who I am.
Yes.
And so
So we're setting
we're
boundaries,
setting boundaries for
and the other
ourselves,
people have to
and then we're
respect
setting
them.
boundaries for the
Okay.
marriage. Right. Go back to when we first got married. How many times did I just walk up in the bathroom like, "Hey, let's have a conversation," and
And
you
I
was
was
like,
like, why are
"Hello."
you walking in the bathroom right
Right. For you, it was a boundary. Like, okay, I'm in the bathroom. It's closed. That's privacy. And for me, we married, so who cares?
Yes.
And how many times I would call you like, "Hey, come here, let me holler at you for a second," and you're like, "We can talk about that when you're done."
Right. When you're done out of the bathroom.
But for me, there was no
I'm like,
boundary.
that's a boundary right there. I'm not talking to you while you are in the
Listen,
bathroom.
I'm putting in work, but
Sir.
here we are 20 years later. 20 years later, if I come into the bathroom and she's in there doing her makeup, oh, I'll go to the other one. You okay? Go ahead and come on in.
But I'm doing makeup. That's different
makeup ain't
when
what I come to the bathroom to do. I'm just saying.
well, I know. That's what I'm saying. It's a difference
Special
when
delivery.
the
But
boundary is when I'm using the bathroom.
for you,
For you,
well, not for me,
no,
because I
not
don't
for
have a
you, because
boundary.
you don't care. You just like, come on
Listen,
in.
it's all, come on.
We can talk, and I'm just
in
like,
the room.
I don't think I can talk right now. I don't even want to open my mouth.
I'm trying to tell you, but
He's
for
just like,
me,
no, I'm good. I'm good. No,
ain't no
I'm not
such thing.
good. I just don't want. I want to wait till you
Because you
finish.
know how it is. You get it on your mind and it's fresh.
Yeah, but
and
you need
know
to write
you're
it
gonna
there.
forget.
Well, it's fresh.
Write it on what? The toilet paper? I ain't got nothing to write
It's fresh when I'm in there, sir.
Fresh ain't the right word. That's
No, right.
That ain't the right word. Praise the Lord. Okay, boundaries. Woo, yeah.
How do you know that your boundaries have been crossed?
When you're uncomfortable.
Okay, so
that's the beginning of it.
That was a great example.
Yes. When you're uncomfortable, then a boundary has been threatened. Sometimes they're always crossed. Sometimes they're just threatened.
Okay.
You know that your boundaries are threatened when you get that uneasy sense. For example, when you're in the bathroom, if I knock on the door, I'm threatening to cross your boundary. At least I feel that way.
Oh.
When I'm in there and I'm trying to relax, and all of a sudden, daddy.
Oh yeah.
Shut up. I'm
I'm
sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry. My mama mad at me. I'm sorry. But my boundary is being threatened because there's a knock at the door. You know your boundary has been crossed when you're no longer in your Zen moment, or when you're no longer at your peaceful moment. Here's the issue. Your boundaries can be crossed and you didn't even know it was a boundary until it got crossed.
Yeah.
Right? There's people with OCD have this problem all the time. And once I said it, leave it alone. Don't touch it. But for me, as a single person, this is the way I am. This is the way the world is. Everything's perfect. When another person comes in and they make an adjustment, well, now I'm offended. And now you've crossed the boundary.
Yeah.
And we get in trouble that way because we didn't take the time to identify what our boundaries are for the person that we are as an individual.
So how do you address someone who have either threatened your boundary or crossed the boundary? Like, because some people get uneasy, like they get uncomfortable. Like if a friend crossed a boundary, or even a spouse crossed a boundary, you get like anxiety, like, oh my God, I don't want to tell him because it might make him like you may do that in a relationship and it will make you uneasy. So how can you express when your boundary has been crossed and not feel that anxiety and scared to even open up and say something?
So it's two conversations you have to have. First person, you're talking to yourself. Why am I uncomfortable? What happened to make me uncomfortable? You have to identify for yourself the boundary that was crossed.
Okay.
And then you have to ask yourself, is it worth me talking about?
Okay.
If you think about any property that has security zones, once an alarm goes off because someone crossed a boundary, the first thing they do is investigate. Where's the alarm? Where's the threat?
Okay. So you investigate.
You investigate with yourself. You ask yourself what happened? Why am I uncomfortable? What boundary was crossed? Why do I feel threatened? And then you have to ask yourself, what level of threat is it?
Yeah.
Is this a big deal or not? Because for some people, I won't talk about my producer, but for some people, Food is a boundary. Me personally, I do not like when people help themselves to my food. Don't touch my plate. Don't look at my plate. Don't stick your fork in my plate. Don't even think about my plate. And yet, this one here, this beautiful queen right here, can never not let me eat my own
Well,
food.
that's not a boundary for me. Just like you said, the
It's
bathroom
not a
thing
boundary
wasn't.
for you,
So then we need to
but it's a boundary
communicate
for
that.
me.
Well, you already communicated
Yes, we've
that to
talked
me.
about that. You
It's
just didn't
just
care. It's
your
okay.
food always look better on your plate than on mine.
I don't know what to tell you, fellas. I don't know what to tell you. But for me, and I've always known that I don't like when people play with my food. It was different when you started sampling my food. And I asked myself before I got mad at you, what's really going on here? See, in the right marriage, boundaries can be redefined.
Mm,
You're the exception to every rule in my life for every person. So where you can do something like stick your fork or your finger in my food, I'm gonna look at you cross, but then I'm over it.
yeah,
Whereas if somebody else do it, I'm ready to stab them with a butter knife.
right.
And so,
You violent
yeah, it's
when it
terrible.
comes to food.
Listen, don't play with food, please. If we ever out together, don't play. That's not good. But because it's you have that all access pass.
Mhm.
Where other people, you know how you go to a concert and they want to let me see your backstage pass, and if you don't have the right pass, you can't get backstage, but
Right,
you can stay in
right.
the general area. Everybody else can stay in the general area, but you have that backstage pass. You got that all access pass. I have relaxed your access to recede my boundaries. But it started, to your original point, with me talking to myself first.
Okay.
Because you have to ask yourself, why am I offended? Why am I uncomfortable? What boundary was crossed? How was it crossed? Who did it? What were their intentions?
Mhm.
Is it something I can live with? Do I need to address it? And then once you've determined those things, the second conversation you have is with your spouse or your friend. If it's a friend, you should, if you have a true friend, you should be able to tell them, hey, you crossed the line with that statement, that comment, or that
Right,
action.
right.
You did something that put me in a very uncomfortable position. And a true friend will hear you and talk about it with you with the intentions of trying to resolve
Right.
so that they don't offend the game. But with your spouse, you should always address when a boundary is crossed. And if your spouse comes to you and says, hey, listen, I didn't like it when you did something, they're letting you know you crossed a boundary. If your spouse is saying to you, I really don't feel comfortable with, or I really don't appreciate it when, those are indicators that a boundary has been threatened or crossed. And at that moment, that's like, okay, let's stop and have a conversation
Do some people ignore boundaries?
all day long and
Like
twice on Sunday.
even when someone tells you, like, that's a boundary. Like, I don't like when you, like you said, tell them what you
Hmm.
don't like. Um, some people can cross those boundaries and not care
Hmm.
that that boundary is crossed.
All day long.
And can
Absolutely.
that be an indicator of, I'm saying in a relationship, and can that be an indicator of a separation? Like, is it to the point where people separate because, oh, I can't talk to that person about the boundary that they cross, and it gets to the point where they keep doing it, and you're not respecting the fact
Yeah.
that I have a boundary.
It could destroy a marriage
Mm.
because it lends
Be
itself
careful, y'all.
to a respect situation.
Listen.
If you are constantly ignoring your spouse's requests to respect a boundary, you're telling your spouse, I don't care about your feelings.
That's right.
You're telling your spouse they are there for you and you are not there for them.
Mm. That's good.
And
Say
that's
that
the wrong
again.
reason to get married.
They're there for you,
And you are
and you
not
are not
there for
there for
them.
them.
And so we've got to be careful. In the book, in the section on boundaries, I give an analogy about a roller coaster ride because a lot of people say that marriage is a roller coaster.
Hmm.
Well, when you get on a roller coaster ride, one of the first things they do is they place you into a seat compartment and then lock you in with some type of mechanism, either a
We locked
seat
in.
belt or a bar to keep you in place. Amen. Um, And on that roller coaster ride, they'll tell you keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle at all times. They'll tell you that, when you get to a certain point, you can lift your hands, but you want to keep your legs inside. It depends on the ride you're on. 9 times out of 10, for the most part, by and large, they all share a commonality that says this is your space to occupy.
Mhm.
And this is a safety mechanism that is designed to keep you in your place.
Mhm.
Well, in a marriage, boundaries are those safety mechanisms. If you get on any roller coaster ride, well, some of the older ones, some of the new ones, I haven't been on one in a while, so I don't know how they're designed. But some of the older ones have like a row, a bench,
Yeah.
and there will be enough room for two people.
Mhm.
Depending upon the ride, it might have. I remember when they went up to three people, but there was a bar that came down that held both people on the bench, but there was enough room to slide back and forth.
Mhm.
So if it was you and I on the car, and we're on the bench, we got the bar across our laps, there was still enough room to slide back and forth,
Mhm.
so that as the roller coaster threw you, you had room to adjust to the curves and the turns.
Yeah.
You even had a little bit of room under the bar so that when you went downhill and you got elevated a little bit by the gravity, you could move, but that bar was still a boundary that wouldn't let you go too far.
Okay.
In marriage, there are certain boundaries that are designed to give you wiggle room, but they have a hard stopping point
Yeah.
that's designed to keep you from going too far. So we've got to be careful that we don't push the boundaries,
Right.
don't push the envelope, because if we don't set proper boundaries, then we won't know how far is too far.
Yeah.
And then you find people, oh, it was an accident. Oh, I didn't mean for it to go that far. Well, you kind of did.
Oh, I tripped and fell on them.
I slipped and fell in, and I don't know what happened. Okay.
That's not funny, but it's not.
It's funny when they use that
But it's just when
excuse.
people say that, like
It's like, really?
when something happened outside of your marriage, it's just like, oh,
Right.
I didn't mean to.
Yeah, you kind of
You kind of
did.
did if it happened.
Listen, if you and your spouse have not had a boundaries conversation, then you meant to let happen whatever happened. I'm sorry, it's that real, because you did not take the time to talk about what's off limits.
Take time to talk about what's off
Have the
limits.
conversation. Let, uh, prime example, we're going to be real. Can we be real?
Go ahead.
We've been together
We real.
22 years. When we met, I was what they call a natural flirt. Now, I did not always flirt with the intentions of creating a relationship with the young lady. Sometimes I would flirt simply to just make a lady smile. I love to see beautiful women smile. I love to see most women smile. And so I had to check that, because as soon as I thought I was going to say all women smile, I just had this image of a lady with no teeth, and I don't know where that came
Oh
from.
Lord. Okay,
Sorry.
keep going.
Um, but I was a natural flirt then. Uh, that made my wife uncomfortable.
Yeah, it did.
Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
I'm being
Oh, go
real.
ahead.
I'm trying to tell you. And so we had to have a conversation and create a boundary. And so I don't do that anymore, or at least I make an attempt not to do that anymore. With older women that are, my senior several times over, I may still a little bit. They
You
got
don't
gray
flirt, you just
hair,
nice.
right? But I had to be
I mean, I got out of my feelings as we
right. The longer we were
the longer
together,
we together. But in the beginning, it was like, why you gotta talk to her like that?
right,
And
right,
then they all smiling and kiki in it.
right.
And I'm like sitting in the car like, excuse me. This is in the beginning. We
Yeah,
talking about in the beginning. We're not
yeah,
talking about now. Come on, y'all.
yeah.
All right, go ahead.
But I had to listen, I had to evaluate, and then I had to adjust. And so when you're setting a boundary, it starts with communication. Everything in your marriage will start with communication. Like I said, when it comes to the boundaries, you have two conversations. You talk to yourself, you talk to your spouse. So she talked to herself. I don't like when he does that, and I need to talk to him about that. So then she came and she talked to me. I don't like when you do that. So we need to do something about it. And together we decided I needed to find another way to be me. I needed to find a better way to communicate so that it didn't make her uncomfortable. Here's the deal. There were and still are women who flirt with me knowing I'm married, and they do it to see how much they can get away with.
Well, because you fine.
Well, I try. I'm working on it. But I have a responsibility to remind them the boundary. It used to be a wedding ring was a clear indicator of a boundary.
Oh,
Not
not
anymore.
anymore.
Let the record show. Um, not anymore.
And
So
half of the time, the wedding ring's not even on. So,
right. So we got hot in here quick. Boundaries. To set a boundary, how do you set a boundary? You set a boundary by starting with a conversation, a communication. You have to establish what things are within bounds and what's out. That doesn't mean you have to create a script and say, these are the things you can talk about, these are the things you cannot talk
right.
about. A lot of boundaries are self-explanatory. What goes on between you and I, even on this radio show, we're going to be as transparent as possible.
Yeah.
And there are going to be several things that you will not hear us discuss
Right.
in terms of our personal
Right.
situation. Because even though we want to be open and we want to be honest and we want to be transparent, there's still some things y'all just
Everything
don't
we
need to know.
can't share.
Just something you just don't need to know. But like we said before, if you ever need a counseling session, we can set up something two on two, one one, whatever the case might be. Let us know. Reach out to us. But setting a boundary, how to set a boundary. It starts with those two conversations, first yourself, then your spouse. It starts with identifying areas of your life that are sensitive subjects for you. And then it goes from there. You will not, and let me say this again for the cheap seats, you will not be able to identify every single boundary in the relationship, in your life at one time. Because some boundaries are only identified when they've been crossed.
Yeah. And when they've been crossed, be respectful enough to just listen to the person who is telling you that that boundary has been crossed. Don't get mad because the person is telling you, "Oh, I don't like when you do that." You like, "I don't care. Why you tell me like that? Why you like that? No." And I mean, it goes for the man, but I'm just talking about but just be respectful at the fact that they actually came to you and said, "Hey, this does not make me happy. So can you please stop it?" That's a boundary that they have. Don't get offended. Just talk about it and ask why. Well, why does that make you upset?
Yeah.
Well, what did I say or what did I do to make you this way? Or can what is something that I can change to make you either not have that boundary again, like for me, or like just communicate. Don't get upset when people tell you that boundary has been crossed.
Your boundaries may not be my boundaries,
Right.
but they should be our boundaries.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We're
Because
one.
exactly.
Yes, in the marriage.
What's off limits for me, she may not care about for herself. Because we're married, the marriage requires that we both respect those boundaries.
Right. Because we're ultimately individuals in a marriage. And we came into the marriage single people and we brought all of those things into the relationship.
Yep.
But you still have to communicate with each other about the boundaries that affect you or upsets you.
Absolutely.
Each other, that upsets each other.
Absolutely.
So be respectful in your marriages.
Yeah. Because and boundaries, we keep seeing boundaries as bad things. The reality is boundaries are a blessing. Because if I know how far I can go, then that means that I've got all this room in here to work. And that means I'm creative in other ways. For example, you've heard us talk about the flowers things, and I'm not getting into that. But for her, no flowers, no real flowers, no fresh flowers. So that means that, okay, that's something that I don't do. What can I do? Since I can't do the flowers thing, what can I do? When we set boundaries saying this far is too far,
Mhm.
then instead of seeing, okay, well, dag, that means all that stuff on the other side of that I can't do, look at all that you can do.
Yeah.
Because boundaries don't just create a hard stopping point of how far is too far. They also identify the area within which you can move and operate
And a lack of boundaries opens the door for others to determine your thoughts, feelings, and your needs.
all day long.
Boundaries are not letting people take advantage of you. That's all boundaries are.
Yeah. When boundaries are threatened, crossed, or ignored, it lends itself to an atmosphere of distrust.
Mhm.
Because if you don't respect boundaries, then I can't trust you to protect me.
Mhm.
And it gets very dangerous because if I can't trust you to protect me, then I'm not going to be vulnerable with you.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to put myself in a position that I can't control.
Right.
It all goes back to control issues. And that's one of the places where control issues stem from, a lack of trust in the person that's meant to protect you. And so we've got to get to that place where we are saying, I want you to be able to trust me. And I can say that all day long and twice on Sunday. You can trust me. You can trust me. You can
Mhm.
trust me. What does that mean?
Right.
The words only have as much meaning as the actions behind them. That's why the Bible says faith without works is dead.
Mhm.
Don't tell me you believe in me and then you never step out on that faith.
Mhm.
Don't tell me that you trust me and then you never trust me. Trust says, I'm going to take you at your word because your actions have proven there's value in what you say because I see
Mhm.
what you say. And so it takes time to build that trust. Prayerfully, you're saying to your spouse by receiving or accepting the invitation to get married, by giving the vows, you're saying to your spouse, hey, listen, I'm giving you the opportunity to show me I can trust you.
Right. And it's a sign of respect. You're respecting your loved one. That's what you're doing.
It,
It's a
yep,
sign of respect when you talk about boundaries and you don't cross them, and don't cross them on purpose
right.
to get under your spouse's skin.
Yeah.
Don't cross boundaries on purpose
Make an
to
effort.
to make them mad. And if you are the one who is always uh I don't want to say getting yelled at, but if you're always the one upset,
Hmm.
you may have a boundary issue because
That's
you're
true.
the one who's pushing the envelope
Yeah.
and making the relationship uncomfortable for
Hmm.
your spouse
Yeah. If I'm
or your
always
significant.
offended, right.
If I'm always offended, and I'm like, oh, every time,
Right.
like, good morning, what you doing in the morning,
Right.
then you're the one crossing the boundaries, and you need to check that at the door.
Yeah. Absolutely. If you are always constantly offended at what your spouse is doing or saying, yeah, they need to be mindful. You also need to step back and ask yourself, like we said, the first part of the conversation, why am I always offended?
Offended, right?
Why are my boundaries always being pushed by my spouse?
Hmm.
Because it's a very dangerous situation to
Yeah.
get into. And then you find yourselves living with a stranger. And that's a whole nother other show. We don't have time for that. This show is already almost over. Listen, poorly placed or individually benefiting boundaries can cause strain on relationships.
Mhm.
When the application of such is seen as a one way or only relevant to the one imposing the boundaries and not safety bars for all parties in the vehicle. In other words, do as I say, not as I do.
Mhm.
It's good for you to respect the boundaries, but not me. You can't go out with your friends and be out all times of night, but I'm going out because I'm grown and I'm going to do me.
Mhm.
And you don't control me. Well, guess what? If you don't your spouse to do it, you shouldn't do it.
Right.
That's number A.
That's respect.
That's respect.
Yeah.
And if your spouse says to you, I really don't like it when you do that, say that, go there, be there, hang out with this person, respect your spouse as a person, as an individual, and as your spouse, then you ought to, at the very least, have the conversation to find out why.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, when someone is outside the relationship looking in, they can see something that you can't.
That is verse for tonight. How to fight clean. Most marriages have their periodic uh skirmish,
What's the beep?
sorry, skirmishes and
You need my glass?
yes.
Uh,
And oh, you made me lose my spot.
Skirmishes.
Skirmishes and all out war. We can't stomp out fighting completely, but we can learn how to fight clean. Here are biblical ground rules for marital battles. First, commit yourselves to honesty and mutual respect. Have you committed yourself verbally and honestly soul to being authentic and honest with your partner, viewing him or her with respect? Next, lay down your deadly weapons. A temper that slips out of control is sinful. Anger that means to hurt is sin. Third, agree with your mate that the time is right. Both partners should sense when to talk. There are times to disagree, and there are times not to disagree. Fourth, after you take a verbal swing, be ready with a solution. When you come to your mate with justified criticism, be quick with a suggested solution. Fifth, watch your words and guard your tone. The louder our voices, the less our mate will hear.
Hello.
The uglier the words, the less we will communicate.
Say that.
And finally, when it's all over, help clean up the mess. Be compassionate enough to weep with the one who's hurt from the fight.
How to fight clean.
How to
I
fight
love it.
clean.
And that even plays into the boundaries because there have to be boundaries in disagreements. We should be able to talk and conversate, but like you used to say to me, don't talk to you like you one of my boys in the street.
Yes, because he used to
Oh,
do
used
that.
to do that all. And when I get sometimes there are the rare occasion when I will get a little
His hood
upset,
self.
and I
His
will
hood self.
you'll know that I'm from DC in those moments. It sounds every bit of it.
Young. That's what he used to
So
say. Young,
uh
bruh.
I
Sorry.
never
We
said
being
bruh.
oh,
That's
you
your
didn't say
children.
that's your son. Sorry.
Yeah.
Young, young.
So that's a whole nother other side of him.
That's a whole nother
Prayerfully,
other
y'all
side
won't
of
know
him.
him. Praise to the Lord.
We prayed that one out.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Jesus. Boundaries. How do you set them? You have a conversation. How do you respect them? You see your spouse in them. There are a lot of things that I do out of respect for her. There are things that I do not do
I
out of
understand.
respect for her because she is my spouse, she's my partner, she is my not just helpmate, she's my not even
My
my
love
other
mate.
half. She
Mhm.
is she's the best parts of me, and so as a result of that,
Ditto.
I respect her.
Hmm.
And I respect my wife for the individual that she is also. I mean, this woman here, the things that she has accomplished and the bar that she continues to raise is just amazing. I'm watching her all her adult life really become the woman that she is now. It's just been a phenomenal joy. So
And that's how you should feel about your spouse. You
absolutely.
should boast about them so everybody can hear
Yep.
how much you feel and love your
Yep.
spouse. If you're out in the streets and you're talking bad about your spouse, that's not love, that's disrespect.
That's right.
So build your spouse up in your relationships
Yeah.
and talk boast about them
Yeah.
because they need to people outside of your marriage need to hear how much you love your spouse. We need more loving spouses and more loving marriages in the world today. We don't need any
That's right.
more marriages that cannot stand the
That's right.
battle and the time.
That's right. Let the compliments of the world be the echo of your spouse.
Amen.
Your spouse should not hear for the very first time from somebody out in the street how good they are, how good they look, how good the work they're doing is. They should hear that at home first. And so that anybody else who said that's just an echo, it should be, yeah, I know my husband, my wife, they told me that already. As
Hmm.
opposed to, oh, for real? You think so? Wow,
Right,
I didn't know
right,
this.
right.
So All right, that's our show for tonight. That's boundaries, how to respect them. Again, shameless plug, go get the book, Divorced Over Toilet Paper. It's on the website, Amazon.com. In the book section, you can get a hardbound copy or you can get a digital electronic copy. They're available, very low price, and I encourage you to get one for you and one for your spouse. We always say that any book that we recommend, we expect or recommend that you'll get one for you and one for your spouse so that you can read them separate individually and then come back and talk about how far you've gotten. And so make sure you take the time to do that because it's going to be very, very powerful in your conversations. Be sure to follow us on all the social media on YouTube, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Happy Spouse, Happy House. When you get to YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell and make sure that you're checking it for all content that we upload because we're going to be uploading every episode of the radio show as well as many other things. Look for this logo, look for all of us on all of these platforms, and make sure that you're following us. Send us a message. Let us know what you want us to discuss when
Yes.
we get back to the couch next
Questions.
time
Yes.
because we're
Topics.
excited about it. We know what we want to teach and talk about. If there's something that you want us to share, let us know what it is, and then we'll make sure that we bring something quality and of value to that arena. Well, that's Veta,
He's Mac.
and this has been Couch
Couch
Conversations.
conversations.
We'll see you next week when we're talking about that very challenging topic of money.
Oh, okay.
Go to sleep. We'll see you next week. God bless you.
God
We
bless
love
ya.
you.
Good night.
Peace.